Imagine, if you will, Scott Morrison campaigning in 2019 on the policy of "we're taking away your Google." Would you have reconsidered who you voted for? Okay, so we all love to hate the big tech companies: Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. Apart from turning back time 25 years or living in a cave, there's not much we can do to remove their influence from our everyday lives though. When we hear the word Apple, we think phones before fruit, and most of us probably spend more time Googling than speaking to our families. But since the government got into a stoush with Google and Facebook, we now face the real possibility that soon we'll be binging or duck-duck-going instead of Googling. Say what? A little introduction. The government's proposed News Media and Digital Platforms Mandatory Bargaining Code aims to force Google and Facebook to pay Australian media companies to have their news content appearing in their searches. This is all under the guise of the government, primarily Reclaim the News Un-Australian of the Year Josh Frydenberg, purporting to care about public interest journalism. In reality, the code's conception stems from our old friend Rupert Murdoch. He's managed to convince the government that Google steals news content and makes billions of dollars from it. Murdoch has pushed this point since 2008, when he considered a tie-up with Microsoft against Google. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission forensically compiled evidence that this theft of content claim was false. Knowing that the News Corp claim was wrong didn't prevent Josh Frydenberg from spreading it himself though. Behind the Media Bargaining Code is the simple reality that the revenue of traditional media companies, printed newspapers, has declined by billions over the past 20 years. Did this revenue go to the tech companies? No. You see, media companies like Murdoch's News Corp and Nine's Fairfax say that Google killed their old hard copy media and the ad revenue that came from it. Firstly, hello, this is 2021 calling. We've moved on from rotary phones, Betamax video machines, and we don't wash our clothes with mangles anymore either. But secondly, Google hasn't exactly killed news or the advertising that goes hand in hand with it. We might not buy broadsheet newspapers anymore, but we do get our news online, and we see ads there too. Advertisers pay to have their businesses targeting you when you're reading your news. You know, those ads that pop up to remind you that your multi-pack of knickers is still in your shopping cart. What big tech has done is outcompete classified ads, job vacancies, real estate ads and the like, which is just how the market is supposed to work. Hence the likes of Uncle Rupert crying over this loss of income. But hang on a minute. Realestate.com.au is 62% owned by News Corp, and the Murdochs are closely connected to Seek as well. Domain is 60% owned by Nine. The big news companies are still making money on classifieds, just differently. Google Australia CEO Mel Silver responded to this media code draft bill, saying it affects the free services and tools we provide to 20 million Australians and more than 1 million Australian businesses. She told Senate estimates that unless an agreement could be reached, Google would have no other choice but to stop making Google search available in Australia. Before you express glee about the tech giant being brought down a peg or two, remember that thousands of Australian small businesses will be taken down with Google too. All your favourite e-commerce websites depend on Google traffic for sales. Local restaurants, florists, beauty salons and so on depend on being found on Google. Overnight, they lose their primary source of referral. As if the pandemic wasn't hard enough on small business, they face the real possibility of losing how they're found by customers. Are we willing to accept more empty shops and more unemployed Australians because Josh Frydenberg has supposedly developed a concern for public interest journalism and making big corporations pay? I mean, if he was that bothered, he could start with making News Corp pay tax. Or, stop cutting the ABC's budget every year. Meanwhile, Microsoft is eagerly waiting to swoop in and take Google's place with their Bing search engine, which is not only a terrible product, it's unsafe. Microsoft's Bing has been described by journalist Richard Cook this way. I can sum up the user experience. It's like asking for directions and then being handed a scrunched up piece of paper with road written on it. It leaves us wondering, if Bing is to be foisted on us as the new Google, will Communications Minister Paul Fletcher, currently loudly singing Microsoft's praises, campaign for the reinvention of Friends Reunited to replace Facebook and Twitter next? And so we ask you again to imagine if the government had campaigned on no more Googling in Australia in 2019.